Hi, I'm Jeff Walter, and welcome back to the podcast. My guest today is Angela Cote. She is the founder and CEO of AC Inc. Angela grew up in a franchise system that scaled to nearly 500 locations. She spent 4 years in field support, supporting the franchisees, and then became a franchisee herself for 18 years. After that, she started AC Inc. with the mission of maximizing the impact of field support across the franchise industry. Angela, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm super excited to chat with you, Jeff. I know that we have similar passions about making sure that people have the right coaching and training and learning and development. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And on the passion side, I'm a true believer in human potential and education, and in its broadest sense. It really, it just amazes me at what people are capable of. And you have a really interesting background there because you grew up in a franchise system, nearly
Mhm.
500 locations. That's a lot. A franchisee for a bit, and then here. So help us understand the background. How did you get to the point where you decided to start and run AC Inc.?
Mhm. You know what? I'm gonna tell you a quick funny thing that just popped into my head when you said that is that when I first started, when I had this idea for AC Inc., which I'll come back to, and I started networking, I'm Canadian, as maybe people can tell. I don't know. Haven't said A yet, but I am Canadian. And so when I started going to these networking events in the U.S., I people didn't know the company that my dad founded, which was originally called M&M Meat Shops. Once I started to say this thing about, well, we grew to almost 500 locations, I didn't know that it was a big deal. Like, I didn't know that, like, and so then people be like, "Wait, what? Your dad is the founder of a company that grew to that? Tell me more." So when you just were describing that when you were in my intro, it's like kind of flashing back to that feeling of people saying, "Well, that's kind of a big deal." And so, okay, grew up in it, so I didn't know any different.
Yeah, well, it is a big deal because especially in the franchise industry, it's that like that 100 units is like the
Yeah,
golden number that everybody wants to
yeah,
get to,
yeah,
and to get it nearly 500, I mean, that's huge.
yeah.
Was that brand only in Canada, or did it come down into the rest of North
Yeah,
America?
yeah. Well, it started in 1980,
Uh-huh.
in just near outside of Toronto, Ontario, and over the years grew across the country. And at one point in 2007, we did all the research and the executive team made all the plans to enter the U.S. and 2008 hit, and so we actually went in with 5 locations in Fort Wayne, and I think it was Madison, Wisconsin, and
Mhm.
they were corporate owned, and we were trying to then maybe potentially sell them as franchises, but everything just tanked, so we just pulled back out and focused on Canada. So it is only a Canadian brand. My dad did sell the company to private equity about, I think, 14 years ago, so he's completely out and living their happy, golfing and, fishing and cottaging and that kind of thing lifestyle. But yeah, so you're kinda asking about how AC
Yeah.
Inc. was born, I think was your question.
Yeah, well, because you grew up in that, and then you were a franchisee. Was it
Mhm.
part of that brand, or was it separate?
Yeah, yeah, so I'll go back. I mean, I grew up doing everything from dressing up as Kelly Kebab as a kid at grand openings to, wave at cars and try to bring people in, to working in our company-owned locations. I know you're still absorbing that, right? We didn't have smartphones
Uh,
back then, so there's no, like, good picture of it, but trust me. And then in the late '90s, I was, going to school for business at the time, and we had an area developer in Western Canada, and so, my dad and his COO thought, "Well, this would be a great idea. Let's send Ange out to Western Canada to work for the area developer, opening stores and working in the field." So that's how I ended up going from, um, kind of the corporate side to going out into the field. And then we were ready to put stores on Vancouver Island, which it was one of the last places in Canada for the chain to expand to. And my dad and the COO were and the leadership team were concerned about the demographic of the market because it was different than what we called typical M&M country. And
okay.
so they said, "Hey, why don't you go do it? Because we're kind of worried about awarding this to a stranger and it doesn't go well. And at least if you go do it, you know what you're doing, it should work. And if it doesn't, at least it's not, we're not messing with a stranger's life and all that." And I thought, "Oh,
Just
okay, so
just my daughters.
yeah." And so I'm like, "Okay, so I'll go over there and like open these stores corporately." And
Uh-huh.
no, 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 no. We mean so, fortunately and we opened our first store in 2000 and then another one a year later and half a year after that, a third one. So, the market was actually kind of ready, which was kind of good. The brand was fairly well known because people retire on the island, so they lived in other places in Canada. But that's how, so as a franchisee of the business, now 18 years on that side of the franchise relationship, and this segues into why AC Inc. exists. Not only did I live and breathe in the on the field side supporting franchisees with no proper coaching on how to do that or no training on how to get franchisees to listen to me, and then being a franchisee myself and having people come into my stores and try to tell me what to do when I had probably trained them initially in that role, right? So they didn't know what to do, so they would revert to compliance or default to compliance, and that wasn't helping me grow my business. So that's the origin of why AC Inc. exists. And I'll pause there because that was probably a lot.
No, no, well, it's interesting because it's a very rare person that has worked both sides of the aisle, as it were, right? Like,
Mm.
I've talked to a number of people that have, had, multi-brand franchisees and built their family, half a dozen units and on that, or and then a number of folks on the franchisor side.
Mm.
But to actually, I mean, that's pretty rare to grow up in a family where, and then to work professionally in a family business on the franchisor side where you're growing and like you said, 500 units, that's quite the accomplishment. Everybody that starts a franchise or franchisor is so trying to get to 100 and to zoom past that. And to do it all in Canada where it's
Yeah,
the population is,
a tenth.
relatively small
That's one
compared to
tenth
the
of what
US.
US is.
Yeah, 1/10. Like that's pretty. One thing that was interesting, not to go down a rabbit hole, but when you said, M&M country versus the island, what did that mean for you
Yeah,
guys?
so our demographic, it's a retail frozen food chain. It still exists today, but it's owned by actually a publicly traded company now. But it's retail frozen food, and our demographic, our perfect customer was a family with young kids that are in a bunch of activities, and
Oh,
they want
okay.
to fill the freezer with all their meals for the week. And where I am in Victoria, there's a lot of retirees and seniors, and not as many families and ideal, but it's growing. And in the end, there was enough to support the stores. In fact, at one point, the island had 8 stores on it overall. Like, Victoria is just one city, it's the biggest city on the island, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, so the demographic didn't look quite right, but in the end, it worked out. It just took a little extra to get people to understand what this people that didn't know us, like, we got when we first opened, people were, the people that were applying were, like, retired butchers who wanted to come back and work, but it's prepackaged frozen food, we didn't need butchers, and so we
Right.
had to educate the market and get the market up and running.
Very interesting. So now, like I said, sorry to go down that sidetrack, but so very interesting, both sides of the spectrum, because it's really interesting the way you you said your dad put that. It's like, okay, I'll go open up some corporate stores. He's like, no, 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 child.
Yeah,
No, you go get the financing. And you grew that to 18 units, which is amazing. And then that's really
well,
interesting with
3
the,
3 units, just to clarify, over 18 years.
over 18 years, the number of
3
units over
3
18
yeah,
years.
3 units, 3
I
units.
transposed the
Still,
numbers in
it
my
was
brain.
it felt like 18 sometimes.
But well
Yeah,
but then the interesting thing would be to be on the other side of the coin and get that field support that,
yeah.
usually that's the lifeline, the voice
Mhm.
of the franchisor is that area manager, district manager, coach, whatever the system is calling it. It's the person the franchisee calls
Yeah.
and talks to, right? It's the
Yeah.
voice of the brand to
Yeah.
them. And to kind of know the owner very well
Mhm.
and then be a franchisee and then on a professional level work through the field. What did you see that created the genesis for AC?
Yeah, well, I often talk about one thing I talk about is the light bulb story. So, I mentioned that as a franchisee, they would my field support in our back then, what they were called, area managers, would our area manager would come in, and because they didn't know how they could help me, they would, as I mentioned, default to compliance and tell me my light bulb's out. And that's not helping me grow my business.
Mhm.
Just because I was maybe in that higher performer category, because I understood the system and knew what needed to be done, doesn't mean I didn't need somebody to help soundboard, like, what is your vision for this? Like, what if instead they came in and said, "Hey, listen, like, I know that, you know everything about the product and, you've been there, done that, but let's kind of figure out how can I bring you value?" And this is, I guess we haven't really exactly said what we do at AC Inc. So maybe I'll
Yeah.
just for anybody that's going, what the heck are they even talking about? What we do at AC Inc. is we help those folks that are supporting the franchisees. The franchisor hires us to, well, put them through a certification program that gives them all the coaching and training to deal with everything from bottom performers to struggling middle performers that are disengaged to struggling middle performers that are engaged but just overwhelmed to top performers. So we are coaching the coaches basically, and coaching and training them to be able to move the needle in their role, and really, instead of being compliance officers, being coaches, and really turning them into a profit lever in the franchise company. Because if we can get them to, if they can get the franchisees motivated, accountable, and on track for better growth, then there's more royalties for the franchisor. So just to summarize, like, that's in a nutshell, we have an education program for those folks. There's a few other things we do, but that was what. So when someone was coming and telling me my light bulb's out, what if they had come to me and said, more with like a business coach hat on, and said, "Angela, what are your three things that are holding you back right now from growing?"
Hmm.
Then I would say something like, "Well, I'm really struggling with, like, where to spend my time. Like, what should I be focused on?" Or, "Well, I'm struggling with retention of my staff." And then if that were it, they could say, "Well, we could go down the path of, like, what about some kind of leadership coaching that I could have taken as a franchisee?" But if they would have helped me identify, like, their job is to identify, as a business coach, identify what does the franchisee need to be able to grow their business.
Right.
All they're doing is telling me my light bulb's out, and that wasn't it. So,
Huh.
so we're all about recognizing that that person, whether they're called a FBC, franchise business coach, or area manager, like we talked about, but we're all about helping franchisors recognize that that is, like I said, that can be your profit lever if you put the right person in that role and give them the right professional development to be able to create the environment that franchisees want to grow.
Yeah. So, if I relate that to your story, you had said the demographics on Victoria Island are very different than, M&M country, which is
Yeah.
more, busy
Family.
families raising kids want the convenience of the a freezer full of food.
Yeah.
It would sound like the type of thing you would be talking about is like, rather than telling me the light bulb was out, it would be like, well, hey, I'm having a challenge trying to figure out how to break into this market. It's more retirees and empty nesters. And, why do they need a freezer full of frozen food? Right. Like that's,
Yeah.
they're not harried. They're not trying to just throw, a good nutritious meal together easily.
Yeah.
They have time to go to the store and get it fresh, and they have time to do this. How do I break into that? Like, that would be more the
Yeah, that
type
kind
of.
of conversation, like,
Right.
that kind of thing. More deeper, strategic thinking and challenging me. If they, that's what we teach. Like, we teach the coaches how do you challenge a franchisee to think bigger, to be able to answer their own questions at times. Like, one thing I see this a lot in. I also run roundtables for franchisors, and one for specifically for the field support teams. Those are free. They're just our way of being able to provide a peer-to-peer platform. And one thing we continuously see in franchising is that people they struggle with boundaries with franchisees because they think that the franchisee is, because they're like, well, the franchisee's paying a royalty. I owe it to them to answer their questions in the moment. Well, what happens is the field support teams end up creating a monster because now the franchisee thinks, well, I know where to get the answer. I'm just going to call Jeff every time. And instead of, what if we taught that franchisee to first think, well, where might that answer be, so we could create more independence for those kinds of things and empower them, instead of them just constantly coming to their field support person with questions. So we want to spend time when we want the coaches spending time actually coaching, like you said, why don't we try to figure this out, this, like, market challenge? Why don't we, rather
Right.
than, I'm going to show up and just tell you where the uniform ordering form is, like, it's interesting how the people, we tend to want to just give answers, and it's easier, and
Right.
kind of like, oh, good, I helped them because I gave them answers. But really, did you help them or did you just leave them more dependent on you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that because it reminds me of the proverb, better to teach a person to fish than to give them a fish,
Exactly. That's what we're
and as
doing.
you're doing that, I was like, yeah, when you provide the answers, and it's the same with your kids as your kids are growing up, right? Especially as they hit those teenage years. I'm
Hmm.
blessed to have some adult children, and if you're giving them all the answers when they get out on the world, they don't know what to do, right? And
Yeah.
it's like the same thing. You'd want to teach them to fish,
Yeah.
right? And to be and that so how I would imagine, well, one, how do you guys do that?
Hmm.
And two, what's been your experience in terms of the type of the demographic or the type of person that's generally in that
Hmm.
district manager or area manager role?
Yeah.
Because the other thing that's hitting me as you're talking is, you mentioned compliance a couple of times, and you talk about business coaching. I'm like those are very two different
Uh,
set of skills and two very different personality types,
hmm.
right? Like, I mean, and a lot of times, compliance can be, people can look down on it or say, but it's important, right? It's important that the sign, and folks there, tend to be more detailed oriented, right?
Hmm.
Because it's like you dotted this I, you crossed this T, and people do that well. Do that, whereas on the coaching, it's a very different mindset. It's
Yeah.
not as much, and the same thing with the fishing versus teaching the fish, right? It's the
Yep.
same thing. It's like, well, if I'm going to catch you a fish, I've got to do these 10 steps to get
Yep.
you the fish.
Yep.
If I'm going to teach you to fish, it's a different mindset. So,
Hmm.
like, how have you over the years seen the difference? And if a franchisor brings you in, does it change the hiring profile?
Yeah.
I'd
Great.
be like, well, how do you do it, Angela?
Yeah. I love how your wheels are turning, Jeff. I could just see it. Like the wheels are just turning. Okay.
I keep going, dear.
I'm gonna kind of jump around a bit because you touched on some really important points that I know people ask us all the time. So I'm just gonna try to respond by answering. I'm gonna start with this: is that if you fix the relationship with franchisees and build trust and show them that and use a more what we call strategic growth coaching approach
Hmm.
versus a reactive, firefighting and compliance approach,
Hmm.
you're actually going to organically solve a lot of that compliance problem because the franchisee is going to be way more open because you've built the trust. When you say when I say I'm coming to you, hey Jeff, I noticed that you got what's up. I noticed you're wearing jeans today. And that maybe you can have a little banter about it, but like Jeff, that's not part of the uniform program. It's gonna be a lot easier for me to have that conversation with you if we have a good relationship.
Right.
Um, I'll just kind of caveat that if we're talking restaurants, like quick service and all that, often what will end up what we see and kind of recommend is you might still have a separate person for the compliance uh, check, as maybe even be an outsourced company, but in the average franchise, you start by fixing that or by this better approach to coaching and support. And it organically makes it a lot easier. Franchisees are more loyal to the brand. So they're more willing to, when they if there's something they don't believe in and they're not being compliant, they're more willing to kind of give and take.
Hmm.
Or they might just not realize they're not being compliant. And now, again, the coach has a good relationship with them and can have that conversation better. Hey, did you even realize this? Plus there's ways you can do some have the franchisee do self evaluation of their store or a business as well. So that kind of answers a little bit the compliance side.
Right.
But in terms of, well, what you said, how first of all, how do we do it? Like, how do we deliver? So that
Right.
the we knew that there was a need for this. We knew there was a need for training and education for folks in the field because again, I lived and breathed it. But I piloted a field support roundtable, the one I mentioned. When I first piloted that, you should the number of people that showed up without any social proof or anything was incredible. I think we had like 30 or something people show up on a Zoom call and it was cameras on. Like we're strict with our roundtables, cameras on. This goes back about
Hmm.
4 or so years. They were starving for peer-to-peer connection, education, professional development. So we knew they wanted it. So then we launched some courses that were like 3 sessions over 3 weeks, and those took off initially, and but we also said, "If you complete all of our courses, we're gonna call you certified, but you have to also do a test and
Right.
evaluation and all that." Franchisors, when they heard this, they said, "Wait a minute, I want all of those right now. Like, I don't wanna wait till you guys put them out because they're live on Zoom. They're not recorded because it's human to human. We need some human interaction." So they said, "We want that right away." So we created this accelerator. It's the certification program that happens in 5 months, and the field coaches, the franchisor hires us or not hires us, but, puts their coach, their FBC or their area manager
Hmm.
into our program. It can be all different brands in one cohort of 10, or in the bigger brands, we'll have a cohort of 10 all from one brand. And they're going through fully being taught the techniques to the coaching, it's relationship dynamics. uh, What does a coaching session look like? Like, what's on an agenda? How do you deal with the franchisee that shows up and just starts crying and venting and yelling at you because they invested $400,000 and it's not working?
Hmm.
So all those challenging situations, leadership, and really proactive coaching. So that is all what's happening in the certification over 5 months, and that person comes out on the other end certified, and people are saying things like, we knew that they needed it, but they're saying, "Now I'm walking tall," like, for people that are just listening and not watching, my shoulders are back, like,
Hmm.
"Now I'm walking in and I feel confident," and one of the biggest things these field team members struggle with, a lot of them struggle with, is credibility.
Hmm.
This is somehow magically giving them credibility because they're coming in, they've got the skills now, and they know how to say to the franchisee that says, "Well, how could you possibly understand? You've never run this business."
Right.
Now know how to respond to that, which is gonna be along the lines of, "You're right, I have never run this business, but I'm here to be your liaison, and I wanna help you, and let's talk about, what are your challenges?" And, of course, I can't answer this all in one pod, but there's a way to deal with that franchisee that they've now learned. So that's how we deliver kind of for the purposes of this podcast and what we're talking about, that's that. I will touch on the DNA of those people, but do you want me to pause there first on any of
No, keep going. Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell
Just
I'm passionate
go.
about this? But you asked a really great question about the skill set and of the difference between somebody who's, like, in the coaching world versus
Right.
compliance. What we see is the best coaches they do have a level of empathy. There's a difference between, like, a salesperson is usually gonna be more like they're kinda more, like, into that sort of excitement about.
Right.
Coach is a little bit more methodical, we find, and there's empathy there. But what we find, we call it the three-legged stool. So when you
Yeah.
look at what sort of attributes should a coach have to be successful, and I say a coach, I'm specifically talking like franchise business
Yep.
coaches,
Yep.
there's what we keep saying. It's they need to love, like, really, or not to love, sorry. They have to understand the business model
Right.
and kind of, like, really get it and probably love the brand, you know? That's the first, of the legs. Second one is some business acumen.
Hmm.
So, and they can be trained and coached on, or, like, they can learn the brand, they can learn business acumen. The third one, they can also learn, I'm gonna spoiler alert, it's the coaching skills,
Right.
the emotional and social intelligence to do what needs to happen. All 3 can be taught, but what we uncovered is that nobody was deeply, like, hands-on teaching and training to the extent of a certification program on this 3rd leg of the stool. Most people could probably teach a little bit about business acumen. What is the KPI? Why does it matter? Which ones do we focus on? What in terms of the operations of the brand? Here's how you do the restoration business. Here's how you flip the burger. Here's how you clean the carpets, whatever. But this coaching, no, people aren't focusing on this 3rd one that we need to make sure that we're working. So they have to start with some good empathy, like some empathy and certain traits,
Hmm.
openness to coaching, being open themselves to learning, self-reflection, ability to, like, self-awareness. If those traits are there, we can coach and teach them on, like, develop the emotional and social intelligence skills. So I think I
You,
answered 3 questions there.
yeah, but I did kind of rapid fire. Like and my mind goes like
3
that.
over
I
wording.
think of this, and I think of this, and I think of that. But yeah, but I mean, but it's interesting because as you were as you were talking about the coaching, yeah, I spent most of my professional career in consulting, and I remember when I was in my 20s consulting folks on how to do project management and stuff like that. People that were 10, 15 years older than me, with a lot more experience, right?
So
And
you
it was
knew right away when I said the credibility thing. I bet you had people.
well, 100%, and it was really interesting because I had an interest in it, and there was a couple of things, but one of them was, and it goes to what you're talking about, the coaching skill. You have to have an interest
Yeah,
in the subject
yeah,
and kind of the technical operational aspects. And I don't mean technical like IT technical. I mean how it all works, how everything does this
yeah.
and comes together. But the other thing that I always found, and I would imagine you're good coaches who are excellent at this. I wonder if it is you're right. I've never managed that. I've never managed a franchisee. I've never managed a project, but I've got pattern recognition because I've talked to
Yeah.
dozens and dozens of people like you, and I haven't done it, but I've seen this pattern, and this is what
Yeah.
that was for me personally was like, you're right. I haven't done that, but I've seen these really well executed
Yeah.
projects and they look like this. And I've seen these ones that didn't work out so well and they look like
And
this.
this is how they got to looking like this. Like you
Exactly.
can say, well, here's what I saw. Like, and that's exactly it. Like we could, for the coach when I was a franchisee, if they would have come to me and said, I see this challenge, and if
Right.
you want, I can tell you like these other 10 franchisees that dealt with this. Let's walk through what I saw there, what I saw working, and bring me value that way. And now your credibility starts to go up because you brought me some value. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love that you get it. That's
Yeah,
cool.
and but I think it ties into those coaching skills that you're talking about
Yeah.
because in order for that coach to internalize the pattern recognition, you have to be humble and realize, well, you don't know everything
Yeah. Exactly.
and you're learning and be open to, and every situation is a little different. Like if we go back to Vancouver Island, it's like,
Mhm.
it's a little different. The demographics here are a little different. So it's not plug and play. It's like, it's, it's adapt. Right.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, and so you came up with this certification program. So so when a franchisor shifting gears a little, when a franchisor is engaging you guys,
Mhm.
what is it? Is there a specific business objective they're trying to accomplish, or why are they engaging you? What are they trying to get out of it?
Yeah, well, I think I should probably throw in a little bit about the other side of what we do, which it's all connected. So what if I go a step further back? Okay, so the
Yeah,
the certification I talk a lot about because it's just easy for people to understand. Yeah, okay, education or professional development for folks in the field. It's all based on something we created called the strategic growth coaching framework. And where that comes from is when I first started networking around, and as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to go networking because all I'd done is grown up in this one brand, and that this was
right,
now 10 years when I started to kind of put myself out there. And I remember getting off the airplane in Philadelphia by myself, female. I'd never been to this big American city. And I actually got in the car that I thought was an Uber because we didn't have Uber on Vancouver Island back then. And some guy drove me. Fortunately, I got to my hotel. But like that was my first start of networking. Side story. But when I
it was not an Uber.
no, I didn't tell my family until about like 8 years later. He just was like, $20. And I was like, after I'm like, was I in Mexico? Or like, that's what you do in like Mexico, right? You negotiate. But anyway, yeah. So just giving that for like context because I was, I was in this world of M&M. I'm my family
Right.
business and franchisee, and then I started networking out there. But
Oh,
what I didn't know what exactly like I knew I'm here today.
I used to live in Philly, so when you said Philly, I'm like,
You
oh,
can
I've been to that airport.
yeah. I still can't even believe it. And it was at night too.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've grown up since then. But so I didn't even know, like I knew that when I go back that far, it's not like I knew that people would say they needed what we have now. Like
Hmm.
this was totally from scratch because I just knew, all I knew was people said, well, wait a minute, your dad is the founder of a company that grew to this. and you were a franchisee in that business for 18 years, multi-unit, you must know something. And I was like, I don't know. What do I even know? Like, I don't know. So I had to go out there and find out. And what I kept hearing when I started asking, well, what are you doing for franchisee support? Because I knew one thing my
Right.
dad really understood. My dad really understood, and I talk all about this now at AC Inc., the human element of the
Hmm.
of the franchisee franchisor relationship. That these people invested their like $400,000 or more in a lot of restaurant cases, to to be supported by you. And it's not about handholding. It is there's an accountability there, but it's we have to take that seriously. And so franchisors were saying, well, I would say, what does your support look like? And they'd say, well, we do everything for them. And I was like, well, what do you mean by everything? And this happens to this day when I ask franchisors, what do you mean by everything? Oh, we have a really good our onboarding checklist. Like we get them
Hmm.
onboarded. We have great initial training. We have a really good LMS that we use. We have we've found a great POS point of sale system. We give them marketing assets. We hold conferences. Oh, and they can call us anytime. And I'm like, well, if you're doing all that, you're doing quote unquote everything. Why are so many franchisees disengaged and not profitable and not performing in all these brands? And so it was going deeper and recognizing there's something missing. And now I even forget exactly what you asked me. Oh, what are
Well,
people looking for? Well, they're looking for you know what the number one thing I think they're looking for? Well, they want their franchisees to step up and take ownership of their success. They want their franchisees to be successful, like they do.
right.
Most, especially if they're still founder owned, oh my gosh, those founders lose sleep every night because there's so much weight on their shoulders. But even if it's a PE-backed brand and it's really all about ROI on the surface or whatever, they want their franchisees to be making money. And so they're usually disengaged if they're not making like, and how do we get them engaged? So they're coming to us because they know something's not right with their support because they're like, we're doing everything and it's not working,
Right.
and their franchisees are not showing up to our group calls and their coaching calls, and they're not getting out into their communities and being the face of the brand and building business. They're stuck working in their business. Those are all the things they're seeing, and they're like, how can we fix this? And we're like, well, let's start with that person that's supporting them in the field that has no training right now. Usually, or not usually, often that person comes up from a corporate location like I did. And then they just threw
Right.
it in the field. And it was like, yeah, I knew the brand inside out. Like I could organize the freezer and serve customers and all that all day long. But nobody taught me how to be a business owner as an
Hmm.
so and nobody taught me how to be a coach. I'm kind of mixing the two, but that's what they're trying to fix is they're trying to get the franchisees to be more like business owners, but we're showing them we're like it's the person in the field that needs help, not
Right.
in this head office. Like we could teach the CEOs and the executives all day long, but it's we need to get to that person that's on the front line with the franchisee.
Yeah. Well, that's where that is the franchisor to the franchisee.
Right.
Is that area manager. They're not picking up the phone and calling the CEO and
Unless they
CFO and
really like
saying, right, yeah, yeah. Well, and going, hey, I've got this accounting issue. What do I do?
yep.
Or how
Where's the
they're
uniform ordering form?
right, yeah, they're like contacting their area manager, district manager, franchise business consultant, whatever the field support. I think of it as field support, right?
Yeah.
Like, you
Whether
know,
they're out in the field or over Zoom, but yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, they're supporting the
Group owners.
network support, and it's interesting because we was just talking earlier. I've spent a lot of time in the automotive industry, and they have huge dealer support networks. Actually, multiple networks for the three different aspects of a dealership: the sales, the service, and the parts. But most folks don't realize that dealerships are also part wholesalers to local shops.
Mhm.
And so there's actually three businesses going on under the one roof, and they've got three the automotive OEMs. They actually have three groups of independent
Hmm.
sales.
Or
Field support district managers, sales district manager, parts district manager,
right.
service district manager, and And it's interesting because I've been involved in, what was really interesting and reason I want to talk to you so much was I've been in that for 20 years and very little discussion has been around how do we optimize, how do we train the field people? It's kind of like what you said. Well, they either got hired in, they've got a real interest. I love your
Three-legged.
sided stool is like they have a real interest in the brand or in the business that we're in, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's selling, servicing, and they'll learn the systems,
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
but how do you be that management consultant? Because that's what you're really talking about is that coach to that business
It's the
owner.
human. I'm gonna say it's the
Yeah.
human. How do you be the coach that's still a human? How do you show that you care without hand-holding and letting boundaries go also? Like, sometimes
Yeah.
usually it swings too far the other way. They're either authoritative
Right.
or they're so empathetic that they are getting walked all over, the coach themselves, right?
Yeah. Well, and I love the term coaching instead of consultant or area manager or stuff like that because the franchisees are not being managed like an
Exactly.
employee,
You just nailed it.
you
I
know?
say that all the time, like, let's not call them a consultant
Yeah. And they're not
or a man.
consulting. That it's one of the reasons I like coaching, and I forget where I heard this, but it's like a coach can't play the game for you, right? So they can't get out there and hit the ball. They can't go out there and score the goal. They they can help the player
Yeah.
do that, but they can't do it for you. And like some of the stuff you were
That
talking
is
about
so
before,
true, like, it's the owning your own success.
exactly. Like
Yeah,
now they can help that person
yeah,
optimize their abilities, but they
yeah,
they can't actually do it for you. They can't fish for you. They can teach you to fish, right?
exactly. I feel like I have to jump in with I don't know if you and I talked about this when we first met or not, but it sounds like we're super aligned on what you're saying. We talk all the time about the difference between consulting and coaching. Consulting, we say, is I'm the expert and I'm going to come and tell you what to do. And you can see in franchising why on the surface you think that might work because we got to make sure they follow the brand standards and all that. So
Right,
I'm going to come in and I'm going to and also because franchisees become franchisees because they want to be told what to do. When once they get in there, it doesn't usually work. They don't want to be told because they start to think, well, wait a minute, this I know more than you because I'm here in this business. So a consultant is I'm going to come in and tell you how to run your business. I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong, tell you what you should do differently. And when you have a problem, you're going to love me because I'm going to give you the answer and I'm going to feel
mhm,
good. When I leave here, I'm going to have helped you and I'm going to feel like the hero and you're going to be happy in the moment because your problems got solved. But what happens when you can't get me when you need me? And what happens when you start to think that you know more than me and I'm not the expert? Now you don't need me. And now you're disengaged from me. And now we don't have a relationship.
right.
That's why consulting is dangerous in franchising.
Yeah, well, yeah, another thing, I like the way you're differentiating the 2, having been a consultant for many decades.
Well,
Because I think the thing that goes to what you're saying is, again, as a lifelong consultant, is the consultant comes in, they solve a problem, and they leave because problem solved.
mhm,
But a coach doesn't solve a problem and leave.
right,
A coach doesn't solve a problem.
right.
The coach is there to help
Of course.
you
Yeah.
be the best you can be, and that's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
And it's
And
it's
empower the franchisee. And we're not saying you'd never do consulting. Like as a FBC, franchise business coach, whatever, sometimes you have to just tell them what to do, and they want that. Like, that's okay, but it's just there's training. Training is
yeah.
different from coaching, right? You would probably be able to school me on that one, but
I
definitely but training is I'm gonna teach you something, right? Whereas coaching
right.
is your like and we need all of them. And
Yeah, it's
sometimes, we get it. Sometimes you gotta just default to consulting because you just do, but, like
well, sometimes there's I never thought about it like the way you're framing it. It's really interesting because it really kind of clarifies a bunch of things in my mind, which is like and especially when you throw training in there, it's
mhm,
like consulting is a defined. you're going in to solve a defined problem.
Yeah, and
And
what if you have a problem?
once the problem is solved, you're done.
Yeah,
And then on the training side, it's usually you're going in to um, to share some knowledge, to convey knowledge,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Like I know that if I do this and this and this other thing occurs, right? Or this mountain is 15,000 feet high, a piece of knowledge, right? Or this product comes in blue and green,
or this is how these are the steps if your POS goes down. Follow these.
right?
I'm gonna train you on that.
I'm going to train you on something. It's knowledge acquisition or knowledge transmission.
Yeah,
And then it's interesting because again, I haven't thought about it from this perspective, but skill development, and the skill can be running a business, fixing a vehicle, baking a cake. Skills never get solved. Like you're never a good enough batter. Your batting average
mhm,
is never good enough. You can
yeah,
always want to get better. Skills can always be improved. And the way you improve school, it's not by acquiring more knowledge and it's not by solving a problem, although that could be part of it. It's the coaching is about the skill development. And in this case, the skill of running a business, which is definitely a set of skills.
yeah.
But it's interesting. I never thought about it like that
With
triumvirate there. That's
yeah,
really
oh,
interesting.
that's cool. I love hearing your reflection on that, and the idea is
Huh.
that if we teach the franchisee, like, teach a man to fish, as you said, uh, we're empowering them, and then they can then just keep using that skill, and same with the coaches. If we teach the coach and we teach and coach them, I mean, the program is more teaching when we were certified,
Yeah.
but we do have ways that we continuously can coach them after they've taken it. But if the coach has a skill for handling difficult conversations, they just have to keep tapping into that skill and probably need some, like I said, ongoing coaching to keep developing it. But that's the difference between having a skill versus, like you said, just solving a problem, like the one off.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing when you said like coach the coach, it's like, well, to a certain degree, say the certification program that you have, you're coming in, you're doing the training
Yeah,
and but you're training a coach, which means you got the coach,
yeah,
but it is still in that kind of, let me give you a set of tools and knowledges
exactly.
and, and teach you how to hit the ball
Yeah.
and I'll coach you through that and let's do a bunch of practices.
That's where the
But
coaching comes in because
you're
throughout the program, they're doing it over 5 months. They're going and they're using the skills and trying it
right.
and then coming back and reporting on what happened and what's working and,
Exactly. So there's the teaching and then there's the coaching and the program ends, but now the coach to the franchisee,
Yeah.
it's not a 5-month program. And that's another thing that's been really interesting in the franchise space
Mhm.
is a lot of it. It's really interesting how much energy is put into the initial
Yes.
onboarding
And
and
then
how little energy is put into the ongoing,
yeah.
right?
Ongoing
And
training. Yeah, there should be ongoing training as well,
yeah,
by the way. Like, franchisees should have the opportunity to have some ongoing training and their business coach. Like, their business
right.
coaches for things like, what's your strategic plan and what's your vision and how are we, like, let's reverse engineer the steps and hold you accountable to those steps because they're your goals. But then there's also, like, you could still do host ongoing training sessions where we retrain on, uh, like, retrain things or train the new initiatives that are coming out. So all
Yeah.
that's one of the things my dad always used to say when he was, in the thick of things is, you train, and then you train some more. He's like, just it doesn't end. Like you said,
Yeah.
like they put so much emphasis on the beginning of that, but it needs to be ongoing.
So switching gears, when a franchisor goes through the program, they have their they come on, either they take the whole program or part of the program. What do they tend to see as a result of that?
Oh,
What's changed? The
yeah.
before and the after. Help me
Well,
understand the contrast.
yeah, great question. And I started to talk a little bit earlier about the strategic growth coaching framework we created because people were saying, what does coaching and training actually look like? So the framework is, and I'm going to answer this question with this. The framework, if a brand wants to really level up and get serious about franchisee success,
Hmm.
then they hire us to come in and put the framework and work with them on using tools and resources we've created for coaches, but customizing it for their brand.
Right.
So the certification is kind of like a do it yourself, you could send one of your FBCs, you can put all of them if you've got a bunch of them. If you're brand new and you only have that one person, just put that person in. And then they can come back and try to implement some of it into the system, or at least just the way they're behaving, they're using the tools and skills as they go. So the results vary from they're just kind of acting different to they might come back and put these, like, they do get these tools and resources in the certification and they can go implement. But where we see the most success is when they bring us in to help them implement instead of the do it yourself. We're coming in and we're saying, well, what are you doing about this? Let's modify that. Let's
Mhm.
set you up to be fully strategic growth coaching. And we've worked with we've worked with some platform brands, larger brands, startup brands that are scaling quickly to put this framework in place. And so the results that we're seeing, if we start with the certification itself, we have first and foremost people, the CEOs of the companies are saying that person now is confident, knows
Mhm.
how to run a coaching session. They're holding franchisees more accountable. Franchisee relationships are better. More franchisees are showing up to, like, engaged to calls. We've heard different sort of anecdotal stats out there of franchisees sale revenues up 20% with that coach,
Mhm.
things like that. With
Right.
the framework overall, I mean, it all takes time because there's so many moving parts, um, but it's just that amplified. It's our coaches are more aligned. Now we're all working from the same song sheet. Like, right now, you got franchisors have, if they have 4 or 10 whatever FBCs, people are we're just banking on whatever they're doing. They may share resources with each other, but one might be using these
Mm.
benchmarks, that one's using that. Like, when we come in to do the strategic growth coaching framework, we're going to check what are your benchmarks? Is everybody connecting on those? What strategies are people using? So it's getting people aligned, which is streamlining things. And I think I know people there. It's helping culture because they're more connected. So those are some of the things we're seeing.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned it briefly, but even though it's anecdotal, I think things like what you said, 20% increase in revenue from the same FBC,
Yeah.
that is the type of thing is huge. Like what I
It's royalties right there, like, that's
yeah,
your ROI.
yeah.
As of the time we're recording this podcast, the program is 4,200 and 4,250, 5 months, and so if you go do some math and figure out if your franchisees went up 20%, there's no guarantee on this. I'm gonna get in
Well,
trouble, but, if even if they went up 15% or whatever, how much more royalty dollars is that for you for the lifetime of that franchisee or the next year or the next 6 months or
yeah.
whatever, you know?
Well, like, it's interesting. One of the it's as an industry, as a learning development industry, training industry, it's,
Mhm.
uh, so I come like I said, I come from a consulting background, and
Yeah,
it was drilled into my head at an early age. I remember asking one of my mentors, "Why does anybody hire a consultant when they can just hire people like me cheaper?" And
right.
he's like, "Oh, silly Jeff, they're not paying the ridiculous rates we charge for you per hour because of you. It's because we can do something that they can't do on their own. If they can do it on their own, they would have done it. But yeah, and he goes, they got $1 million problem. We have a $500,000 solution that they can't figure out on their own.
Mhm.
And it's all about ROI. ROI was drilled into my head at
Yeah.
an early,
Yeah.
and then I get into the training industry years ago, and people are like, knowledge is good. And I'm like, yeah, where's the ROI? But where I was going with this is one client, large automotive OEM, and the one of the folks in there was senior in the training program, dealer training. He had done the math, and it was amazing how viral this was.
Mhm.
A certified, and the math at the time was a certified salesperson sells twice as many vehicles as an uncertified salesperson,
There you
and a
go.
certified service tech has a 20-point higher fixed right first time score than an uncertified guy. And you're the guys paying for the warranty work. So having 20% of the 20% of the time the thing being fixed right higher, that's,
Yeah.
and the point is like those simple metrics,
Mhm.
like like anecdotally what we see, you can't bank that this person, if they go through training, will have 20% or 30% or even 2%.
Mhm.
But what I've noticed in that organization was that type of thing was viral because, to your point, everybody knew what that meant. Everybody in that company up to the CEO level knew what selling twice as many vehicles per salesperson meant.
Right.
They could put they could just in their head put a dollar figure on it without anybody saying anything.
Yeah.
And same thing on the on fixing it right the first time. They knew how much money that was being saved, and therefore it's like, oh, we had to spend X dollars to train the person, or what? It's like doesn't matter. We just saved half
Usually
a million.
for a small fraction of the outcome of
Exactly,
the
and
ROI.
it was really interesting because it went viral, and in the organization, I remember just people just just it was just common knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And so like that's really cool that you're seeing that type of improvement because that's
Yeah.
huge,
Yeah,
huge.
I mean, everybody wants direct, obvious ROI, or revenue, increases, and I think we'll get there over time, but it does take time. So right now we're measuring
Yeah,
things, like I said, franchisee
yeah.
engagement. Are the calls more focused on the vision of the franchisee? Or are they more just answering questions? There's things we're
Yeah.
measuring right now. So it'll
Yeah,
be
well, those are the leading indicators, right? The more engagement,
yeah. I
the
mean,
nature of the questions and all that. Those are the leading and the trailing indicator
just
is
comment.
you know higher sales, but that that's an after the fact, right?
Yeah.
So that's really cool. That's very very cool. Angela, is there anything else you want to share with everyone?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
would love I got one more thing then. If what I love to do is I love that when people are around me for them to leave with sort of inspired to go take action on something and actually go do it. So I got a challenge for people that are listening. And this doesn't just apply to FBCs or franchise. If you're just training and develop anything is if you've got teenagers, you mentioned it earlier, if you've got someone that seems to be depending on you to give them answers, and you want them to be more independent and maybe empower them when they come to you with a question, hold yourself for a minute. Instead of feeding the monster, try flipping it around. So that's something people could go do right away, even if you're a manager of other team members and they come to you with a question. Instead of just giving them the answer, what if you said, well, what would you do if I were in Mexico, or not Mexico, if I were in like Africa without Wi-Fi and access for a month? What would you do? And see what they say, because often
yeah,
they have the answer in them. So that's the coaching
yeah.
approach versus the consulting.
That's very cool. So thank you. And Angela, if folks want to get a hold of you, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'd love for people to connect, of course. LinkedIn is where I'm most active, so they can find me, Angela Cote, on there, Cote. Our website is fieldcoachexperts.com, and or they can email solutions at fieldcoachexperts.com. But we are always open to just brainstorming and soundboarding calls, and whatever problem people have. We're never into hard selling, so if people just want to get some support and things like that, or come to our free roundtables, as long as they're on a franchisor team. Yeah, happy to talk to people about all of that.
Okay, and we will make sure to include a link to your website in the description of
And
the podcast.
before we say anything else, thank you, Jeff, for having me. This was a real treat. It's always so fun as a entrepreneur founder to be able to talk about our business.
Well, I tell you, I got a lot of I learned a lot out of it, and it's really interesting. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was, that whole idea of supporting the FBC or the
Mhm.
area manager and providing them with training and coaching. I think it's one of the under focused areas,
Mhm.
and yet that is the face of the brand to
Yeah.
the franchisees,
Yeah.
right? That is the human they're talking to. And so I think it's a really important area. And I think it's the type of thing where you can, as a brand, see significant uptick if you can have a really well developed support network out there for your partners. So thank you for sharing that with
Yeah.
everybody.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. Thank you. And so, and so thank you, Angela.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you.
and to everybody out there, thank you for listening. I greatly appreciate it.